Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome back to another edition of the Unity Talks podcast. I'm your host, David Cathy. Thank you so much for being here with us week in, week out as we interview guests who are in leadership positions across DFW, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And those positions that they are in are accounting, finance, tax, human resources, information technology. As you know, those are the areas that Unity Search, our organization, focuses on and placing talent in those disciplines, whether on a perm or a contract basis. And if you are watching online today, you guys are in for a very special treat. We actually have 3 cameras set up. We've got one trained on me, one trained on our guest, and a double shot of both of us. And when it cuts to that double shot, if you look right past us, you're going to see guys cleaning windows on our large building here in North Dallas. And so I've always thought, I don't know how much these people make, but I would really there's got to be some hazard pay to that when they're just sitting on that little board, scaling down by a rope. So hopefully you'll get some value out of this. At least you'll get some comedic value and wonder, like I do, about how much they get paid if you look past us as we are talking on this podcast. All right, let's get to who our guest is. It's going to be a real treat. We have had a couple of nonprofit CFOs on our show before, and they have been fantastic. Notably, we were just talking about Amber Kinney, who is the CFO of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and she did a fantastic job. And our guest today will do just as good, if not outdoing Amber. Hopefully Amber doesn't hear that part. Of our show today, and her name is Rebecca. She is the CFO of National Breast Cancer Foundation. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. So crazy enough, the way I was introduced to Rebecca was through my wife. Rebecca and I actually happen to go to the same church, and we were doing some small group thing and some extra lessons, and my wife was just sitting right next to her, and she's like, Dave, do you know who this is? And to, I think, your surprise and shock and dismay, I was like, oh yeah, Rebecca, the CFO of National Breast Cancer Foundation. And you're like, how did you know that?
Yes, because then as we talked more, you were like, I reached out to you on LinkedIn like 5 years ago, and I was like, oh gosh.
I got ghosted.
Out. I know.
You ghosted me.
Not on purpose.
Oh my gosh. I knew Rebecca's mentor, the old CFO, John from National. I still keep up with him.
John.
He's fantastic.
Yes.
I need to get him on the show.
I know. Yes, he would love it.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's an author. He does. I think he has 3 or 4 different businesses that he kind of dabbles in now. And
yes. He was a big part of forming my career and a lot of the things that I was able to learn at National Breast Cancer Foundation. So he was a big part of that.
Yeah, we'll probably hear more about that in just a few minutes too as we get into this. Okay, so let's start us off here, and we want to give a couple minutes on, tell us about National Breast Cancer Foundation and how we might be able to support them.
Yes, so we exist and we focus on helping women now. So we do that by providing help and inspiring hope through education, early detection support services. So what that looks like is 3 main pillars of support and programming. So it's education outreach, it's patient services, and it's support services. So if you think of it like educating people in the forefront, before they know anything about breast self-exams and health, like we're in that space, and we do that through community outreach. We are on the ground with people. We are responding directly to people who need resources in their community and just need to know what to do. The other piece is we've kind of become a publishing house too of educational resources on topics that people just want to know more about. So what do I look for when I'm doing a self-exam? I'm worried about recurrence. I've been a breast cancer survivor, but I'm really worried about recurrence and like how do I get past that? So we've created over 20 ebooks based on those topics, and that's really because we're very focused on being mindful of our community needs and what they're looking for. So listening is very important to us. We also do services for companies and organizations, so we go and help them and help their staff and employees. So we partner with HR a lot to help them learn about how to do breast self-exams, because if you don't know, men also get breast cancer. It's 1% of breast cancer rates, but the mortality rate is higher because they usually don't know to look for it. They don't know that that's possible for them. So we try to educate companies about it. The second pillar is our patient services, and that's really the early detection. That's the core. Education, early detection are really the core of why NBCF was founded 35 years ago. It was by a breast cancer survivor, Janelle Hale, and back then there was no internet. There's nothing to search. You couldn't figure out what was going on or what your doctor was telling you. So she was big about creating those resources and then removing barriers to care. So making sure that no women had to worry about the financial impact of getting a screening and all that. So screenings, all types of screenings, and then also if you're diagnosed, we place patient navigators in hospitals across the country, and they will help you navigate the system, because if you know anything about medical, if you've cared for anybody, if you've been through a big diagnosis yourself, you're just thrown into this new world of medical jargon and what's happening to me and what do I need to do. So they're there to remove barriers, and really for underserved populations. I mean, any population, but those who just don't know how am I getting off work? How am I going to get transportation? I can't get active transportation there, caregiving and things like that. So they really help remove those barriers. And then the third pillar is that support. So it's like everything else of support groups in our office. We have national support groups. We have dedicated metastatic support groups, which is when you're stage 4, so you'll live with cancer for the rest of your life. And then we also have, which is what most people get introduced to NBCF, is our Hope Kit program. And that is curated kits that go to women who are going through breast cancer. And the items are things that help alleviate the side effects of breast cancer. So you think of dry skin and having to stay hydrated and nausea. So we have all these items in there to help with those things. And we do these big community packing parties. They're once a quarter. We have one coming up May 16th, and we're out of Frisco.
Okay.
So, and it's so fun. We make it a party. We're actually going to be packing our 100,000th Hope Kit.
Awesome.
And it's just cool, the stories that you hear about that program, because I've heard a story of someone being in Minnesota and they're in the grocery store and they see somebody with our tumbler going through, the store. So we've had a huge impact. If you see on any of our social platforms, there's usually somebody there saying, "Thank you so much for my Hope Kit. It was so meaningful to me. It came at one of the worst days I was having, and it let me know I was part of a bigger community." So those are the programs that we do, and I think we stand out at NBCF because we're very focused on removing barriers to care, helping women now. We fill in gaps. So like I was saying earlier, when there's a need, we fill it. We work really hard to make sure we're creating programming that meets needs today. And then we're very one-to-one. So people have said, like, it feels very, not like this big organization, but like very personalized. So I'm very proud to work there and been there for 14 years now.
I know, it's been so long. We're going to get into that. That's why we're here, but we always want an opportunity to learn more about an organization. It's funny, we can all, even yourself, I'm sure, would say, oh, yeah, I could still educate myself a lot more on breast cancer and all this other stuff. I was just having a conversation with a young lady in our office today, and she was talking about something, putting something on her skin. And I was just like, well, the skin is the largest organ in the body. And what you put on your skin gets absorbed. And so you just have to be very careful about what you're choosing to put on your skin, And when you think about breast cancer, your lymph nodes are closest to the surface, almost at your armpit. So you have to be very careful. And more information is coming out, maybe not through national press, but if you're interested in biohacking or things like that, they have gone a lot into, oh yeah, you know, you need sulfate-free, aluminum-free, stuff like that. And so I think there's a world of education that is so critical to the future health of not just Americans, but people globally.
Yes, and
That's
a lot of
huge.
those questions come up, and they're probably on our website. Answers are probably on our
Yep.
website because we get them a lot, and a lot of people want to know how to prevent, how to make sure they're not getting, you know, or dealing with it. So, like, of course, health and nutrition, and there's some of those, you know, some of those things chemical-wise we want to try to stay away from. So yeah, visit our website too.
Yeah, visit the website. And, you know, there's that old Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is now, today. And so if you want to make a change, begin now. There's no better time other than 20 years ago. So, all right, so let's get into you, Rebecca. Okay, let's talk about, you know, how you got to where you are, 14 years at National Breast Cancer Foundation. And then you also do some other kind of things on the side that I found out a couple days ago, which are really interesting. We're going to try to tie that in towards the end of this. Okay, so, but you got to start off by telling us, like, why accounting? Why finance? Did you follow in mom and dad's footsteps? You just knew I want to be a CFO when I grow up? Or did you want to be, you know, a soccer player when you were 7 years old? What did you want to do, and how did you end up in accounting and finance?
Yeah, it's funny to even think about, gosh, really young, what I wanted to be. I was like, what was on those questionnaires that I said I wanted to be? Probably an artist or something like that, which I can't draw for anything now. I don't know where that came from, but I did enjoy the creative process, I guess. But then it became, I had a really great English teacher in high school, and I wanted to be like her. So I wanted to be an English teacher. Then you get into English in college, and I was like, I'm not that good at this. I'm getting a lot of not great grades, so maybe this really isn't my thing. And the school I went to had a 5-year teaching program. So it's part of why I went there. That was like their one master's program was teaching. It's part of what I went there. I pivoted. I was doing business too. I was doing economics and finance, and I got into an accounting class. I always liked math, but in high school you get into geometry, terrible. Calculus, no good, right? But I mean, I was good at elements of math, but you got into some of those complicated things, and I was like, maybe this isn't for me. But when I got into accounting, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. It's very easy for me. So I did very well in the class. So it started making me think, you know, maybe this is the career for me, because it was probably my junior year, starting to think about what am I going to do after this. I was always wanting to be a step ahead in terms of like what the next thing was. Big planner. And so when the job came across from career services of being an accountant for a home builder, I was like, yeah, that seems like a good fit. Seems like something I might enjoy exploring next, at least to see if I do enjoy it. And so I went into that role and, you know, started doing some more of the accounting classes, because I didn't major in accounting. So I started doing some extra classes to be like, do I like this? Do I want to pursue a degree? Do I want to pursue my CPA? And yeah, liked it. I mean, was doing well at it. So it's like, okay, if I'm good at it, it should be a sign, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed like the problem solving, the reconciling, figuring out, you know, what the next thing was. So now I've taken that to different levels now, the problem solving that I enjoy, but it was very, you know, applicable doing that role. So that's how I started. Yeah.
It's so interesting. There's a couple of things that I'd like to pause on for. It's a great reminder. You know, my kids are older and they're out of the house. You're so impacted by people you look up to when you were, I mean, your English teacher when you were in high school. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to be like her. And it's a good reminder. We're all leaders in different ways. You don't have to have some title to be a leader. But what you do have to know is that people are watching you. Like you were watching your English teacher, and we're just like, man, I like the way she probably carries herself around the room and how she talks and how she gives me attention and how she grades, and she's inspiring. And, you know, so in your office, at home with your kids or the neighbor's kids, like those little eyes or older eyes, because it could be a 25 or a 35-year-old who's they're watching you.
Yeah.
You know, and there's something I've said on here many times, more is caught than taught, you know, like you have to be aware because people are going to catch you doing stuff. And if they want to emulate you, then they may be emulating the wrong things if you're doing the wrong things.
Yeah, isn't there no better mirror in front of you than when seeing what your kids do and realizing, oh, that's me.
Yes.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's really well put. So yeah, I love the way you said that, because you kind of, as you're navigating and figuring things out, you know, you had that person. It's just, when I heard that, I was like, oh man, that's a good, like, straighten up, David. Like, make sure you remember people are watching. The other thing that you said that I thought was so good was, you know, it's kind of crazy where we're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and it's like you have to pick what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Oh, I agree. I have a thing about it now.
I do too. I'm like, man, why? And that's why nowadays, you know, studies have shown, like, in our parents' age, it was, you know, they picked a job and maybe had 1 or 2 job moves in their life.
Right.
And then for Gen X, it became, you know, you're going to have multiple job moves a lot more. And now the younger generations coming in are, well, yeah, you're going to have a lot of job moves, but you're also going to have career moves.
Yeah.
And it's so hard just to pick. So whatever you pick, if you're in college or you didn't go to college and you picked some other discipline, it doesn't mean that this is what I'm going to be stuck to for the next 40 years of my life until retirement. It changes. You changed yours, and we're trying to navigate even as a junior.
Yes, right. And I think I bet if you look at a lot of people's college degrees, I wonder how many people are actually doing maybe related, but like probably not what they initially thought they were going to do. So I do think it's interesting to think through that choice so early on. And someone was telling me their grandson was going to high school and they're already having to figure out their whole track for high school of what they want to do. So what is he, 15?
Yeah.
14, 15? And I know there's probably resource constraints, and that's why they're doing it, and they're trying to plan people out. But man, I mean, so I'm a big, also on that topic, I'm a big proponent of internships and doing and dabbling and trying different things and using that time in the summer. Same way for my kids younger, I have a 9 and 6-year-old, I'm doing different camps to explore different activities for them in the summer so we can try things out and see if anything sticks. I mean, same idea with internships. As you get older, try different disciplines to see if there's something interesting to you, and use that time because it's low stakes, low risk, and you can find some options.
Totally agree with that. I love that. So so those listening, I mean, if you're still trying to figure things out, that's okay. You know, that's okay. She's living proof of that. I'm living proof of that. I was a finance degree, did that for a couple of years and thought,
well, baseball first, right? Weren't you going to do baseball?
Baseball, I was going to do that. And then all of a sudden kids came and it's like, okay, that's out the window. So I got to change my Major League Baseball career to like something, you know, it's just, it's okay to do. It's okay to do. So that's important. All right. So you talked about internships. I'm curious, your first professional job, or maybe it was an internship, like what did you mentioned a home builder. What did that teach you that you still carry? Are there a couple of things that it taught you still carry with and think about today? Yeah,
well, the interesting thing about starting with a home builder was it was in 2008, and if anybody remembers what happened in 2008, wasn't so good in the economy.
Not at all.
Not great for home builders either. So we started out, I came into our best year, we immediately went to our worst year. 11 people when I started. I was there almost 3 years. There were 3 people by the end. It was just an unfortunate, just unfortunate. It was a smaller home builder, but because of that, my boss got let go. I didn't have a CFO. I was doing all accounting finance functions. Wow. So I got thrown in at 22, 23 I was a bookkeeper to, now you're doing everything. And so just leaning in, I think I learned a lot of just leaning into the learnings, leaning into getting the opportunity to learn the different sides of the business. I made mistakes for sure. I mean, I remember one time going to the boss crying because I didn't get insurance on a house. And I was like, what if something happened? Because these houses are millions of dollars. And it was okay, right? Nothing happened. But I just remember making mistakes in that process. But leaning into the learning and leaning into just opportunities that I wouldn't have had if I was just, closing the books and doing bookkeeping. So insurance, making sure the checks were paid, making, payroll, getting into really all aspects of an accounting person, and like doing my boss's job of a CFO that was there before me. So I was pretty cheap at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
so this
I
is your
also
second CFO
recognized.
job. Congratulations.
Thank
You're
you. It was interesting going, because when I first went to NBCF, I was just doing a staff account. So I was going to do way less. It was way more because they were way bigger.
Yep.
So the volume was way bigger. But I'd already had so much exposure to so many things. So it was a really tough process, but I think I learned that the leaning in did so much good for me in expanding what I knew, and I just continued that throughout my career. Just kept leaning into new things so I could learn a different skill or work with different people, learn a totally new piece of the business. So I think I took that and just kept doing it, which is what.
I wrote that down. I wrote leaning in down because as I'm listening to you talk, there's so many things I'm having to write them down because my mind is like, okay, stay on this topic, and I want to go all over the place. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes as a 22, 23-year-old, and you're faced with a choice. The economy's in the tank. Mm-hmm. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. I can vouch for that. And you are the accounting finance department, and you're fresh out of school, and you see all these people get let go. Mm-hmm. So you have the opportunity to freak out, which you probably did, right? But you're really faced with a fork in the road of, do I lean in, which is what you chose, or do I complain?
Yeah.
Do I just, woe is me, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, and act upon that? And I think if we all look back in all of our careers, professional or personal life, quite frankly, we have that choice probably millions of times a day, and some habits have, just by habit, we don't even know that we're thinking through that choice because it becomes a habit. But it almost ties into what we were talking about in the beginning, which is, thinking about those choices that you have to make and choosing the right one because people's eyes are watching. Your CFO is gone, and now you're doing all of it, and your boss, the owner of the company, he can sit back and go, okay, well, I've got to get rid of Rebecca too because she's just complaining and she's upset. But he sees you lean in, and he doesn't. And I think that's so valuable to people of making the right choice.
Yes.
In that scenario.
Yeah, I don't really have the phrase "that's not my job" in my vernacular, whatever.
Love that.
And for better or for worse, some people may like, I hate that. I hate that about, I am very much about what's in my role and responsibilities and sticking to that. And I think there's something to being aware of being taken advantage of. That's a different side of it if your company's taking advantage. But I've always just wanted to say, what else is there that I can do that helps the company, but also helps me explore something that I enjoy? So what are some other things that I can do that I think I can bring to the table in terms of what I am passionate about or what I really like doing? And maybe it's outside of my scope of what I'm supposed to be doing, but I can learn a lot from it and I can bring something of value to the business. So it's like a win-win.
But for you today, you still do stuff that you're like, I can't believe I have to do this. But everybody has that in their job, right? Yes. So if you decide, well, I'm never going to take out the trash ever in my career, it's like, well, you're going to be changing jobs all the time because every job has a take out the trash moment or two within them.
That's right.
And again, people are watching like, I don't want to do that, but I know Rebecca doesn't like that, and she's doing it with a smile on her face, and so I probably need to shape up or ship out.
Sure.
That's 100%. Huge. Yeah,
yes.
You got to lean in. I love that. That's really good. The other thing that I wrote down here is, I think maybe this is getting better. I don't know if it's getting better or not, but we live in a society a lot of times where it's like, don't make mistakes. There's such a fear of making mistakes. And you made it, you realized you were still alive, you have all your faculties. It wasn't the end of the world, and you probably learned from it as opposed to just not doing something and sitting on your hands. I, for one, would prefer people take the risk, calculated, not just wild risk, right? But a calculated risk, and think that it's they're trying to do something positive, and screw it up and say, hey, I messed up, made a mistake, here's what I learned from it, and they get better from that.
Right. Right. And I'll say when I had somebody recently make a mistake and she was nervous to come to me, but she's like, I know I need to tell you what it is. And honestly, her heart for just being like, I messed up. And she was more upset than I was going to be upset about it. But even just seeing how she took ownership and whatever, it was like, made it no big deal to me. Like, I was like, oh, you care? You're going to fix it? No big deal.
I love
that. We can move on from that. So I think there's something to being very holding yourself accountable and making sure that you're taking ownership of those situations. But because I've had the flip too, where someone didn't want to say it, they didn't want to admit, and I want to be like, do you understand what's happening or what did happen? I need to know that you understand so that you don't do it again. So I need you to acknowledge kind of what happened. So there is, I've been on both sides of that, and then I mean I do hate making mistakes, but I would rather talk to the person and share, because I have great leadership too, thankfully. So that if I ever did, oh my gosh, they'd be so kind to me. You know, I know they would. So they're there with me. We're all together. It's all those things. So
well, and from your great leadership, you've learned that, oh, there's time for me to have grace and be gracious when someone is coming proactively to say, hey, I messed up on this.
Yes.
You know, that's where you have an opportunity to give grace to them and make sure that we learn from it.
Yes.
But giving grace is such an important component of leadership, because, you know, we're human. We are going to make mistakes.
Yes.
Unknowingly, and maybe sometimes knowingly, we might make a mistake. And that's where gracious leadership comes into play.
Yeah, and I remember, I mean, to your point, the early experience of doing that in my first job, he was so gracious to me. He was so kind, you know, and he was a really kind man. So I always knew I could go to him about anything.
Yeah.
So, and I take that away. I walk away with that feeling.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I do that for others too.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so you can tell. So 14 years at National Breast Cancer Foundation. And you came in as a staff accountant, and a much bigger organization. You've advanced through many different roles on that track. And we talked about early on how John was such a great mentor and helped shape your career to where it is today. So what are some of the maybe we call it mistakes, maybe we call it, you know, things you did well at, you know, what are the things you've learned during your time there that you're trying to pay it forward now and be the John to someone else?
Well, one of the big things, because I'm very big about that, is kind of investing in the next generation. And so one way I did that was I started our intern programs. I started both our college, and we have a high school intern program. So I was really big about, and it was twofold. It was helping them understand how the workplace, you know, what does working in a big girl job, big boy job look like? What does nonprofit business look like behind the scenes, so we can get more people involved in nonprofit? It was a pipeline for us. We have a ton of interns in our top leadership now that started 8 to 10 years ago now as interns and have just grown in the company as well. So I was really big about mentoring. I'm not, unfortunately, as involved as much anymore. I'll try to do pieces here and there. It was something I was able to pass on, but just being able to invest in the next generation has always been really important to me, of just being there to talk to them about things and have them ask the silly questions that they don't really understand, but you're here to help them with. Because if we don't tell them, there's a big Brene Brown quote, clear as kind, and if we don't tell them what they need to know, they're just going to go on, and you're going to cross your fingers that somebody else tells them. No, I mean, I think when they're in we're under your care, if you will, you want to make sure that you're preparing them as best as possible, and you're giving them the hard feedback too sometimes, so that they know where to go next. So I think I answered your question in terms of next generation.
Yeah, no, that's
but
big.
I know there was something to like, what have I learned or what have had to grow in a lot, and that was as a very financial focused person and someone who didn't like to speak in a room. I had to find my voice, because I was very much say what I need to say as quick as possible, and nobody wants to hear from you. You know, how can I condense whatever I'm saying so you get the message? So I'm good at that. I'm typically good at condensing and synthesizing a message, but I was like, get it over and be quick. So speaking and being in front of people was very hard for me. My parents in some way would probably be shocked. And this is something for, just because you're this way as a kid doesn't mean you'll always be this way. But I was painfully shy, like had to get to class before everybody else because I wouldn't walk into a room with people.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, that lasted a long time for me. That was hard for me to walk into a room with people already in it. Now I'm just late all the time. And I'm like, whatever, I'm over it now.
It's
but
fine.
It's fine. So I'm painfully shy to being able to talk. And it was practice. It was John pushing me. It was Kevin putting me, he's the president of the organization, putting me in different positions just to keep flexing that muscle and pushing on something I wasn't good at. But if I want to be in leadership, like I got to be able to talk. I got to be able to talk to people, share our mission, share what matters to us and everything. So I had to be able to do it. I'm not like your leading speaking expert or whatever, but I learned a lot of things. And what I did was, fake it till you make it. I leaned into people who I thought were very good at it, and I would try to mimic them, right?
Yeah.
Try to mimic their tone or try to mimic how they express themselves, embracing the pause and not the fillers, things like that. The silence is good. Silence sometimes engages people because they're like, wait, what's going on? Did I miss something? And then you get re-engaged just by not talking.
That's right.
And so I've tried to pick up things along the way to improve that. But I also have realized in that process, I do not just like being a 30-minute public speaker. Like, that is not my thing. I like engaging people and facilitating people for conversations, which I think is needed so often, especially in the business world. Like, we're working on this. Talk us through it. Get us on the same page. I love doing that. So I found ways to use speaking in a way that works better with my brain and how I process things.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. Well, you do a great job of it. And so you may be saying, oh, I'm still on that path. And we all are to some degree. But you can tell that you do a great job of that. You're very intentional. Like that's a theme that I can see with you. I mean, you're very intentional throughout your career and what you've done in areas you need to work on. So I'm going to take a little bit of a right turn here as we're in a wrapping up what we're talking about today. That intentionality has led you down a path through Clifton Strength Finders, which I've taken before. I took it twice, and she scolded me for that, just to be clear to everybody.
Take it once.
Clear is kind. Clear is kind. So she was very clear. She was being very kind to me. That is something that you've done intentionally for you and intentionally for others. So how did that come about, and what is your goal with that?
So interestingly, we'd taken from John, I think, we'd taken the Clifton Strengths Assessment at work. Everybody who came in did the assessment, but we would we would learn what the strengths were, but then we didn't do anything with it. So I was part of a leadership cohort for nonprofit professionals, and we did a full day session training on strengths. And I just fell in love with it. And I was like, I feel so seen through this assessment. There were other assessments. We had done Myers-Briggs, we had done Enneagram, we'd done all the things, not all the things, but many things. And I just felt it felt very custom to me when I had done this assessment. And so learning through that process and digging in more, I got interested in, how does this person do this? Or what, as a facilitator, like, what does it look like? And I just asked more questions, and then I got involved to eventually do the training to be a facilitator myself. And it fit me so well. My strengths include relator, which is very much like one-on-one connections. I really enjoy deep, lasting connections with people. And also individualization, which is finding the gifts in people. So you talk about a talent test, that's seeing the gifts of other people, and I love doing it. And then I have other talents that kind of rotate in there. But once I started doing it, I felt this other, fullness in my life, I guess, in terms of how much joy I got out of talking to people about their talents, having them see what they are, having them celebrate what they are, and find ways to lean into it in the workplace. So kind of expanding even on the intern thing. Now I'm trying to do that same mentoring for everybody. It's just in the lens of your talents and strengths and how to grow that. So NBCF invested in me to do this, and I've done it with the whole company. We do it all the time. We talk about it all the time so that it becomes part of your culture, becomes part of your language that you use. And I just am a big fan because it's all about where you get your energy. And that every leader, you said this earlier, every leader looks different and leads differently, and it's not one set of skills. And that's the background of the Clifton Strengths, is they were looking for what's the key to being a leader, and it was like way bigger than that. It was that you have to just lean into what you're really good at. We're so often used to leaning into our weaknesses. What do I need to do better to get there? I was saying about speaking, I got to be a best speaker or whatever. And it's really about knowing what those talents are and finding ways to lean into them in your job and throughout your day. And that can be really, I guess, invigorating in terms of, oh, I see these talents and I'm working in a job where I can use these talents every day. Or you see the other side, I see these talents and I'm not getting to do that. And so what does that career look like for me? That's why I actually really want to get into doing it younger, like in high school or in college, where those kids are doing these tests and thinking through that, or what is the job that will fit some of these things that I'm naturally gifted at. So I'm not constantly pushing into things that are draining me in my day, and I don't end up 30 years down the line in a career that I just don't like, and I never found fulfillment in.
So there's so much value in everything that you just said. I'm going to highlight two things that stood out to me. For those, you alluded to this, strength finders, it's a lot of times we spend so much time working on our weaknesses, and this is saying, like, you should really spend time maximizing those strengths because they're natural to you. They're inherent in who you are. And if the time that you would allocate to just trying to bring up your weaknesses, you really threw it into your strengths, it's going to propel your career at a rate that is faster than what it is today, whatever that speed it is today. While at the same time, and you mentioned this, you did work on speaking. And so, just want to point out again, it's not saying don't work on weaknesses. It's maybe time allocation. It's I want to work on my weaknesses because I know in the position that I'm in today, I am in a C-suite, or I want to be in a C-suite or somewhere along that line. I need to challenge myself and get out of my comfort zone. You don't grow if you stay in your comfort zone. I don't care what discipline we're talking about, whether you're hitting a gym or you're in the workplace. If you stay in your comfort zone, you have decided, I am going to quit growing. And so you purposefully said, hey, I really need to emulate people to become a good speaker. Even though that maybe wasn't necessarily inherently within who you are, your strength, you still chose to work on it. So I think that's important for people to understand, because sometimes people think strength finders and they're like, only spend time on your strengths. That's it. Zero time allocation to this other stuff. And that's not necessarily what it is. And you're living proof of that. And you're a facilitator in that, which I think is great. The second thing that you mentioned is, and you did this earlier when talking about something else, is maybe you're in a career that isn't very fulfilling to you, or you're not receiving some type of passion. And that's what's causing people to change careers and or change jobs more frequently. And that will come back to bite people at some point in time. It just will, unless you go off to be like the YouTube star and you become a millionaire and all that good stuff.
Shout out Mr. Beast.
Which, neither one of those are sitting here and not Mr. Beast. Before you make a change, use your voice. You talked about having to find before you decide, that's it, I'm quitting. That's it, I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to change it. Why not use your voice? Because if you do have a good leader that's sitting on top of you and can help you, they're going to see if there's opportunity within the organization, if you can add value, to find where to put you or put you on a project or move you into a new career path in the organization. I can tell you there have been people in my career, they come in and then they resign, and I'm just like, wow, I don't want to lose this person. But they've already made this choice to resign, and I wish they would have just used their voice to come talk and let me know. And maybe I can't help them here, but I could still help them somewhere.
Right.
And you mentioned that you found your voice, and you needed to work on that. I think that's super important.
Yes, and a couple things. I think it's great to just understand. I mean, it's just great to have the self-awareness at the end of the day of like what you can do so that you can lean into it. The other thing to acknowledge that you said earlier is people are going to expect things out of certain roles, right? You're going to have expectations that you can do X, Y, Z, and so you do have to meet those expectations, right? But at the same time, can your supervisor be very aware, or your organization be very aware of what you do have to bring to the table, so they can lean in? It's a win-win if the organization's aware and the individual's aware, because I know there's things that I do not enjoy doing, and now I know the people on my team who do enjoy doing it, so let's work together on that, because you can do what you love and I can do what I love, and everybody's happier, right? And we're helping the organization at the end. So that organization awareness, like you said, of placing people, I mean, it's awesome to lean into too. Oh, you are great externally and you're sitting in an office all day. Can we get you out in the public more, or train you more because you love it and you want to be out in the community or whatever that is, because those are where your talents are. So let's lean into that, because we need that, we need that awareness out there or whatever. And then you're going to be happy, you're going to be working harder, and we're going to get more out of you.
Amen. Amen. I love that. Okay, so normally I have a little bit of a different last question for you than what I typically do. No, it's for you. It's just going to be a total layup because of who you represent here today. For our listening audience, what can they do? And it may be just going over what you said at the beginning. Like, what can we do to get involved in helping National Breast Cancer Foundation move forward?
Yes. Okay. So, great question. We always have volunteer opportunities. If you're anywhere near Frisco, we always have volunteer opportunities. You can come for the community packing party that I mentioned. It's there's online opportunities now to just like help get involved. And that's like a first step, right? Like, let's see a little bit about NBCF and what they do and what they're about. And always volunteering is a great way to do that. If you're very touched by breast cancer and you're interested in like being a community advocate in that way, we have community ambassadors, which is like a super volunteer. You get training, you get some materials, and you're able to go out in your community and actually help serve, because we recognize that outsiders coming in isn't always as effective to helping people understand what they need to know. They don't trust, right? So people in their own community going out is really the best thing that they that we found is very effective. We also, of course, we're always fundraising. You can do different kinds of fundraisers. Companies can get involved. A great fundraiser we've been able to do is the Hope Kits. So you get to get like a custom packing party, like just your company, custom encouragement cards with your branding and things like that. So we work a lot with companies. We've been very big with organizations. A lot of nonprofits usually are individual, like that's kind of they've figured that out really well. We've done corporate really well for a long time. So you see products on the shelves that have pink on them, and there's a percentage of proceeds that come back to us. So organizations that want to work with or do cause marketing in that way, they want to do packing parties. You can do fundraisers to support us. So donating at nbcf.org is always a great option too. And then just learning. Just if you're anybody, I would say if you're a woman, but if you're a man too, like go learn about what you need to look for. We're big on advocacy for yourself and the early detection mantra. So just making sure you're aware and taking the time to educate yourself, especially if you're 40 and over. But if you have a history or anything like that, I think our biggest thing is just empowering people with education, making sure they take action.
Love it. Rebecca, it's been great having you here so much. Thank you so much today for coming in.
You for having me.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us each time. I hope you got as much out of today as I did whenever you're listening to it, whether that's later today, next week, next year, next month, it doesn't matter. There's so much value, and just pay it forward by forwarding this podcast to people you think would be beneficial for them to listen to, who want to be future leaders, are already sitting in that leadership spot within their organization. And until next time.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.